With the arrival of the Minister of Environment, who now takes over as the lead negotiator and head of the Gambian delegation, more critical meetings unfold, to which the minister briefs his partners and stakeholders about the mitigation and adaptation projects happening in the Gambia. The minister is also holding talks with the LDCs and developed countries to finalize the Paris rulebook on this COP24. At the African Ministerial Conference for Environment meeting, the Environment Minister and his African counterparts were briefed by climate negotiators on the state of affairs on the various themes such as transparency, accountability, and financing landscape. The IPCC reports also shows that African countries will suffer the most due to the low-lying areas with effects to climate change. In an interview, the minister raised the point for African countries to reduce the dependency rate on external funds for adaptation programs.
This was the point I was about to raise. How do we as Africans come together and raise our own resources so that if the others fail, this can serve as a contingency for us to finance our own mitigation and adaptation actions.
The Environment Minister proceeded to a closed-door bilateral meeting between the Chinese and the least developed countries, discussing their common position.
We need to have a common platform where we agree on what to push for the international community to recognize, particularly our special circumstances and also the financing needs that we have as developing countries, as well as supporting the technology aspect of our climate resilience.
The Environment Minister participated as a panelist on the United Kingdom's pavilion, to which he held talks on driving transformative climate action in cities through financing for sustainable infrastructure.
The challenges that we are faced with is high density in the city. And this has a lot of impact on the infrastructure, on the services, on the goods, the environment, particularly in the area of waste generation and waste management.
The third high-level ministerial dialogue focused on concrete efforts and initiatives on mobilizing finance and investments to translate climate finance needs into action on enhancing developing countries' access to climate finance. The recent IPCC report identified with brutal clarity that climate impacts will only increase if we don't take urgent and immediate action, to which vulnerable countries like the Gambia will suffer severe consequences.
The Gambia has clearly defined in its NDC the intention to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 44% and 45% by 2025 and 2030, respectively. To achieve this ambitious target, the Gambia intends to reduce her dependency on fossil fuel for electricity generation by more than half.
Under the backdrop of developing climate change policy in 2016, the Gambia developed a strategic program on climate resilience.
The Gambia has already developed, with the support of the World Bank Climate Investment Fund and through the African Development Bank, its strategic program on climate resilience to provide the country an overarching framework for guiding climate-friendly investment programs in priority sectors of the economy.
The greatest expectation from this COP24 is to define the rulebook for the implementation of the Paris Agreement, serving justice to the poor and vulnerable people around the world. Reporting for GRTS News in Katowice, Poland, I'm Ibrahim Cham.